I had to have my favorite song on before I got started. And my sister says she's ready. So, hey guys, it's Dr. Christy Hafer kicking off our interview series, Connected. I decided to start this series because, well, lots of reasons, but one was because I wanted to share a lot of my resources with many of you. I have so many business connections, not only in the community, but across the country, as you're going to learn. And I get a lot of questions from people about, I'm going to add my sister right now to the talk. So I get a lot of people that ask me, what do you use for this? What do you do for this? How can I do this better? What am I missing? And I tend to do a lot of referring to other practitioners to say, I'm not the best at everything, but what I can do is bring you some more information from somebody else that I know, that I trust, that I love. And I thought no better than to have my sister, Dr. Angela Dixon, over in South Carolina, you guys. So it is like dark out there. It's raining here in Idaho. P.S. We had a thunderstorm for like 10 seconds. But she has such a cool birth story. So I think that a lot of what we talk about, and she's also a pediatric chiropractor, which I'm sure she'll let you know about, that we talk so much about having a healthy birth and how important it is to also have a healthy pregnancy. So I want to talk to somebody who did that so she can give you guys the tools, because I had a lot more birth interventions, and I had probably every birth under the sun, which we don't have time to cover today. However, if there's somebody that's got an encouraging birth story, it's her. And whoever is listening and been in my office or maybe listened to our videos before, or my Dr. Angela Dixon's videos, when we talk about the birth process, we're like, okay, don't touch the head, let the body process it naturally, because now 85% of births are augmented. You can't see my fingers, my finger quotes here, but an augmented is such a little, just gentle term for it's been intervened with in some way, shape, or form. Whether there was Pitocin, an epidural, there was forceps, there was hands, there was a vacuum, there was a cesarean section. And guess what? A lot of the times, I can't say a lot of the time, 10% of the times we've determined that is necessary to do, because thank God we have medicine, and thank God that there's people here that are able to help infants who can't come into the world. It saved my life and saved my son's life. But when you can go all the way back to, I think, like pre-baby and start to plan this out. So whether you're pregnant, planning on getting pregnant, or you just need to hear an encouraging birth story, this is Angela Dixon. I think that was a long enough introduction, my friend. How are you tonight?
Good. It's pretty late over here in South
What time is it?
Carolina.
9?
About 9 o'clock?
And I'm assuming our little buddy's sleeping.
He is. Yep. I tried to plan that so he would be down and sleeping and not give Dad a hard time while I was on here with you.
I think the worst he could do is breastfeed, so I think we'll be fine. Little buddy. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. Let us know how you planned this pregnancy and what the steps were that you did to get the birth that you wanted. So take it away.
Yeah. So starting with, we do scans in our office, just like Dr. Christy does. If you've ever been in our office, you've had a scan done, or in her office. And I got to a point with my scans where I was finally in the green box on the HRV for the first time in my life. My thermal was clear. My SUMG was awesome. I was like in normal range for everything. And it was so perfect. And we're like, gosh, we want to start a family soon. Lo and behold, little did we know God had it in that plan that month. When I did that scan, I got pregnant. So it shows you what happens when you have a healthy body, and a body that's not living in stress, that your body actually wants to be pregnant and sustain that pregnancy. So it was a nice little surprise for Valentine's Day. I gave Chris a shirt that said Papa Bear on it, and say, hey, you're gonna be a dad. Yeah, so that was really fun. So getting my body to a really healthy state was step one. So often, I know that you see it in your office, we do too, women who struggle with infertility will run that HRV scan, and they are just deep red, just very, very stressed, that's all that they run on is stress. And it's really hard for a body that's already stressed to want to have that pregnancy. So that was really awesome to be in that healthy state. My skin did drop off after I got pregnant, but we worked it back up by the end. And just starting from the beginning, I knew I wanted a home birth. That's all I ever wanted. I wanted to be in my own space, kind of in my own bedroom, doing what I wanted, not being told what to do. I'm not very good at doing what I'm told to do. So I knew I wouldn't do well in the hospital. Someone telling me what I had to do. So I started interviewing midwives right away. I met all the midwives in my community, and that was a really good idea because I was able to pick one who had a complementing personality with myself and someone who had the traits I knew I was going to need when I was in delivery that I didn't maybe have myself, or my husband, who is my daddy doula, the traits that he didn't have either. So I picked a very calm, gentle person, which was what we needed.
If you have advice for somebody of like, okay, I want to do, whether it's a home birth or I'm going to do a hospital birth, I'm assuming you recommend a doula. We always do too. And that's somebody that's going to encourage you during the birth and be your voice that you maybe can't have while you're there, or your husband. So how did you go about saying, okay, this is what I needed?
I knew, like, my husband had never done it before, and he seemed anxious about it every time we talked about birth. And I knew that I was going to be kind of in my own world, probably a little stressed out. So I knew that I needed somebody who was going to have that very calming personality, who's going to be able to bring the room down, not let things get overwhelming, and just kind of make peace. So when I met my midwife, that's exactly what she was. I knew right away, like, you're going to be my person. You're able to just bring that calm into the situation. So it really just,
okay, good.
Yes.
And same thing with your doula.
Yes.
I'm assuming. Okay.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, so just people who I knew were going to kind of support me in the areas where I knew I was weak, that I was going to need.
And isn't there like a doula website that somebody could go to if they wanted a doula? I think online across, the U.S., I think there is a website people can go to, interview doulas. I know people are, doulas are happy to interview. Y'all are sisters. Yes, we are. Yes, we are, Kim. So you have the birth team ready. And you have the plan ready. See, I'm not a planner, so this is great when I hear somebody that's like planning things out to what they want to get. Like, start with the end in mind, right? Start with the end in mind. And we talk about this as well in our office. You get your mother's nervous system, right? So you're welcome, my 3 boys. You got my nervous system. But what you're doing, thinking, saying, if you're feeling stressed, baby starts to develop that. So I know in our office as well, we'll see if there's a child that's struggling, or maybe there was a lot of birth intervention that was needed. Mom was typically really stressed. And when we say stressed, we're talking about that fight or flight response, where when you think about your body being fight or flight, it's tense, it's tight, it doesn't want to let go. It doesn't want to release in that birth process, which is what Dr. Angel had an amazing time with. I remember finally researching birth after my second one, and they were like, you got to relax into the pain. And you're like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, that sounds like I can do that. Visualize the cervix opening and letting all the contractions happen. So not, easier said than done, but it's been a piece of advice that I've given to people as well. If you can relax into that pain, because I was definitely resisting the pain, and I knew I wanted to have a natural birth also because our mom did it without meds, and I was like, dude, she can do it, I can do it. So you did it. So tell us more. What happened leading up to the labor?
So for me, like you said, it was a ton of preparation. I'm a planner. I want to have everything ready, everything in step. I had a little tote with this is all my birth stuff. Here's the birth tub. Here are the directions for the birth tub. Like, literally everything was set up. But more important than the physical setup was the mental setup for me. It was, like you said, preparing myself to be able to relax into that pain, to allow my body to open, to do what it needed to do, and to get that confidence in myself that I knew I could do the birth and not allow the fear to take over me. I feel like the second people find out you're born, or that you're pregnant, they want to tell you their birth horror story of how like they pushed for 18 hours and then ended up in a C-section, or they didn't get to the hospital in time for an epidural and they felt like they were getting ripped in half. Like that's all people want to tell you. So my midwife actually had a really, really good suggestion. She recommended get yourself immersed in positive birth stories. So there's actually a podcast called the Birthful Podcast.
Like F-U-L-L,
and
Birthful, okay.
Birthful. Yep. Birthful Podcast. And they have birth stories that women come on there and they just share their story. And it's not, when I say a positive birth story, I don't mean it was perfect, that it went everything with the birth plan and nothing ever went wrong. I just mean that the women had a positive outlook on that birth. And no matter what happened, they were able to go with it because they had planned for anything that could happen. So getting immersed in these positive birth stories helped me so much to see all the different things that could happen, how women dealt with different things that happened in birth, and just get a better idea of what it really was going to be like when I was actually in that. Because it's hard to imagine going through that whole birth process when you've never done it before. And what's it going to end up like? Am I going to be able to do it?
And this is birth number 1 for those of you guys that just joined us. It's our first pregnancy. So, you did a great job planning for this. Nice work.
Yeah.
Nice work.
That's something I do that you don't.
Oh, 100%. I do remember you calling me in labor, stopped labor, and I don't know, someone's calling my office right now. And I was like, you know what, you got to just chill out. Have a glass of wine and chill out, which I heard the midwife allowed. So tell them what you did. I got to close the door. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I actually went into labor at work adjusting patients on a Thursday night. And so it started, but they were just kind of like early labor, not really progressing. And then into Friday, it was still just kind of early labor, not really progressing. But being a first-time mom, I'm so excited. I'm 41 weeks. We're finally going to have this baby. I mean, they waited forever, it felt like. And so I called you and I was like, gosh, it just like the contractions are inconsistent. We're not progressing. I don't know what to do. And you said, have a glass of wine, take a nap, just chill out. And finally on Saturday morning, I called the midwife to come. I was like, I just need you to come. I need some help. And she got there and she saw me and she's like, you look exhausted. You need to take a nap. And I was like, I can't take a nap. I've tried. The contractions are too consistent. And if I lay down, they're stronger. So she's like, here's a glass of wine. Like, this sounds familiar. This advice sounds really familiar. Go take a nap with your husband. Like, go in your bedroom, shut the door, lay down, take a nap. So I did, but interesting point, I could only nap on my hands and knees at this point. If I laid in any other position, the contractions were stronger. So I like stacked up pillows so I could be on my hands and knees and nap. So I napped for a couple hours. And as soon as I woke up from that nap, I came out in the living room, said I was hungry, ate an egg sandwich. For some reason, that's what I wanted. And then active labor started just all of a sudden. So that's what my body needed, was me to stop thinking, stop being excited, relax, and allow it to do what it needed to do.
So a lot of times, I mean, I'm sure people on here have had birth, spectrum of births like I did, from hospital to emergency C-section, home birth, and a scheduled C-section. So I've kind of seen it all, and a lot of what they say is don't eat, right? They're like, don't eat, don't do anything. Do you know why they say that?
In case you need to go into surgery, right?
Put you under anesthetic. So eating is really important. I tell women this all the time. You got to be able to sustain that energy and listen to your body and do what it's designed to do. There's a huge difference between what we call an innate intelligence, which is way, way stronger and way more important than what we call our educated intelligence. So when we say there's 300 trillion bits of information that reach our brain every second, we're consciously aware of 50 of those messages. The 50 is that right there. That is the educated intelligence we try to trick our body into, that other people might trick you into. And the innate intelligence is those 300 trillion bits of information that you let reach your brain is shut that educated intelligence down, which I love, because I remember telling you, you know what, I just wanted to push when I wanted to push. So you guys have to hear this part of the story. And I said, I just thought, oh, okay, I'm 10 centimeters, let's get this baby out. I mean, here we go, educated intelligence, push it out. And I never had that urge. And I said, right at the end before Landon was born, because I had it in my home, I had this vomiting feeling that my body contracted and the baby was born. And I was like, so you should wait for that to happen, because I feel like that was what I was supposed to do. And people say, I feel like I'm supposed to push. And I PS had done this in my other birth that turned into a cesarean section. So I'm glad you waited, but tell them about it. It's called the fetal ejection reflex, but talk to them about what happened.
Yeah, so once I got into active labor, the midwife allowed me to get into the birth tub. I say allowed me. She asked me if I wanted to get in, and I was like, yes, please, let me in the tub. So I got in the tub. It was like a magic potion. It kicked up my labor, got way stronger, started getting way closer, progressing, baby started moving down. The midwife actually, before I got to pushing, she has a rule where if you get in the water for more than 2 hours, you have to get out and take a walk. So she had me get out to go use the restroom. So she asked me, please get out, go use the restroom. She does this because she said she finds with her women in a tub, if they're just not quite finishing dilating, or if they have a cervical lip, if they get out and walk, it actually pulls that back or helps you to finish dilating, so you're ready. So she made me get out, and I wanted to kill her. I go sit on the toilet, contracted there for a while, and then she asked me what I wanted. I wanted to get back in the tub, got back in the tub. As soon as I got in the tub, my body started that fetal ejection reflex almost immediately. And I was so thankful that you told me to wait for this, but no one ever told me to push. I had a very hands-off birth. They let me do what I needed to do, let my body work. It was really, really nice. So all of a sudden I had that vomiting feeling that you talked about, where my body just pushed, and I was like,
this is it.
Here we are. So I told the midwife, I was like, oh, my body just pushed. And she's like, okay, that's good. Yeah, just keep going. I'm like, oh, okay.
So write this down. If you guys don't know what a fetal ejection reflex is, write it down, because I wish someone had told me this. This Google is like, I wish I would have known that's what it was. Write it down and research it and wait for that to happen, because the other cool part is that she didn't tell you is her cervix was never checked. If you think about, because I was in the hospital, if you think about how many times someone's hand was up your vagina, ramming on your cervix, and you wanted to kill someone, it's that, once again, a fight or flight reflex, because you're in that protection. It's going to start to reduce your body's ability to relax and be able to open the cervix and allow for something like a fetal ejection reflex to happen. So take it away.
Yeah. And this is another reason I love my midwife, and I knew we were going to be a good team, is she was so hands-off. Like you said, never did a cervical check. She just allowed my body to go through the process. She said, if I check you and you're a 3 or you're a 7, it doesn't change what your body's doing. It can just deter you or make you feel negative if I check you and you're in a 2 and you feel like you should be further, so she just super hands-off. I loved it. She just let my body do what I needed to do. So once I got to the pushing stage, this is where I made my biggest mistake of my birth, that if I could go back and do the whole thing over, I would not do this. So the baby is starting to descend. I can feel the head. I'm so excited. And we get to the point where the head is molding. So it kind of comes out a little bit, goes back in, comes out, goes back in. So we're molding the head and we're stretching all the tissues so you don't tear anything when they're coming out. A lot of times women get really frustrated at this point, and I did too, because it's like, oh my gosh, I'm making so much progress and they sucks back up in there. What the heck? So here I turned on my thinking brain, and I was like, oh, I'm going to push. So I wasn't pushing at all. I was just letting my body do the fetal ejection reflex, push him out. I'm like, if I push with the next one, I bet I can get the head out. And that's not a good idea. So I tried pushing and immediately felt something tear and did this little yelp. I was like, oh my God. And I was like, that was awful. And I told everybody, I'm like, oh my gosh, something just tore. I don't know where it was, but that hurt really bad. And little did I know, I found out later, I had an arterial bleed, because they said every time my heart beat, blood was squirting out into the water. So the midwife just told me, place your hand where you felt the tear and just hold so it doesn't tear more, because I had been holding my perineum, and she said, I'll hold your perineum, you put your hand where you felt the tear and just hold. So my husband, looking from the outside, said it was insane, because there was this blood squirting out, and then all of a sudden you just put your hand there and you stopped it. He's like, you're going through this labor, this incredible thing, and you have the conscious mind to put your hand and stop this bleed, so you don't bleed out while you're giving birth, and then you just continue with your birth. I didn't know any of this at the time. I just was like, oh, okay, I'll just hold it so it doesn't tear more.
Yeah.
And so I actually stopped my labor though. So I'm like about to deliver my baby, and with the next set of contractions, my body didn't do the fetal ejection reflex because I turned on that thinking brain and I was scared. I didn't want to tear anymore. I scared myself into stopping labor. Like I'm literally like 2 minutes from giving birth and I stopped it. So this was the only point where somebody asked me, like, do you feel like pushing? Like, you need to allow your body to keep going with this process. You're shutting it off and you need to let your body finish. You're so close to meeting your baby. You have to let your body push. So with the next round of contractions, I allowed myself to kind of go back into, we call it labor land, where like I let innate take back over, and the fetal ejection reflex kicked right back up. And then very, very shortly later, I delivered the head. When I delivered the head, I felt the midwife unwrap the cord from around his neck. So I knew immediately that was something we were going to have to deal with later. We can talk about that, the effects of cord wrap. But then I delivered the body, and this was something I was really adamant about too with my midwife, and she was awesome with it. I was like, don't catch my baby, don't pull on my baby. If I'm in the water, just like let me deliver the baby. And she did. So that was, I think, the most rewarding, my biggest success is I delivered my own baby. So I picked my baby up out of the water, and I tried to bring him up to my chest, but I couldn't. It's like he was stuck. So they turned a flashlight on, and the cord was around his head a second time, or around his neck a second time, and around one of his shoulders. They called it like a backpack. So they had to untangle him, and then I could bring him up. And I had thought that maybe I could sit in the water and hang out with my baby, but immediately they said, get out of the tub. You need to stand up, get out, get onto the bed. My bed was like 3 inches from where I was because I was bleeding really bad at this point, and I didn't know. That's why they had me get out, get on the bed, and put baby in my chest. They put a blanket over baby, and then they immediately went to work on me, trying to apply pressure, get the bleeding to stop. And about 30 minutes after I had him, we didn't know what we were having. We never had an ultrasound, didn't know the gender. So about 30 minutes later, my husband finally goes, are you going to look at the gender? It's like, oh, you can look. I'm good. I did it. I brought this baby into the world at home how I wanted. You can just go ahead and look. And it was
a little Cooper. That's awesome. Okay, and a couple other things I was going to mention with the whole birth, the natural birth, and hopefully a lot of women already know about this, letting the cord pulsate, right? Like letting the cord pulsate, letting the placenta deliver itself. How important that is, because when you cut that cord early, the baby loses about 50% of their blood supply, which is obviously full of nutrients and tons of immune system and stem cells. I mean, there's so much inside that cord that has to get out. If it can happen, let that cord pulsate, whether, like I said, you're in a hospital or you're at home, letting that cord pulsate, letting that baby have the skin-to-skin contact with mom. We know how vital that is for you guys to be able to bond and have the relationship that you need really, really early on, and be able to nurse and latch, which I know we don't have time for all of his story about the cord being wrapped around his neck, which is something you can't obviously prevent inside the womb. A cord being wrapped around a baby is something that you deal with after if there's some stress, in the neck, which he had a few latching things with that afterwards. But I need you, Dr. Dixon, give them some of the resources. I know you said watch the Birthful series.
Yes, the Birthful podcast.
Of course, like we said, your body, your nervous system is what your baby's getting. So the calmer you can be, the better you can be. It sounds like get a birth plan and plan things out with the end in mind, because that was genius. And then what else? Is there something that I'm missing that you could tell them to be able to do?
So there's a couple books that I read that really helped me. One of them is Well-Adjusted Babies. So this one is really good because it takes you from like preconception all the way through birth, and it gives you really good tips and tricks all the way out through the whole pregnancy delivery for just things to help you be prepared. And also Ina May Gaskin's book. I think we're down the name. Ina May Gaskin, Guide to Childbirth. Ina May's Guide to Childbirth. The whole first half of that book is birth stories. So again, positive birth stories. And then the second half is all about how to have a natural birth. And then something that I did is I actually attended my local La Leche League meetings while I was pregnant. So this is a breastfeeding support group run by women for women. So I was around breastfeeding women. I heard the struggles that they were having, the discussions that we're having. Again, just trying to prepare myself for a positive, successful breastfeeding experience by getting that exposure to breastfeeding women before. And I found that really helpful for just, again, being prepared for what was going to happen.
That is cool.
After.
I love that. You know, they tell you women have been having babies for thousands of years, and you're like, well, that sounds nice. I'm glad that we've been able to do it. But it's in a totally different situation when you're the one doing it. So preparation obviously is key. Being surrounded by a community of supporters. So breastfeeding supporters, or if you know you can't breastfeed, people that are going to support you with however you can feed them, whether it's donated breast milk, or we always say raw goat's milk is something that's really close to breast milk, that the proteins that the baby can digest. And of course, most importantly for us in chiropractic is making sure that nervous system and that your brain and your body can have the innate intelligence and that connection that it needs, because that fetal ejection reflex is obviously highly important, but just the hormones that are going through your body, even first trimester, second trimester, third trimester, and what we call fourth trimester, when you are recovering from that birth. I mean, it takes a lot to be able to breastfeed a baby, grow a baby, continue to grow mammillary glands and everything you need to do, lack of sleep. So it's highly important that you keep your body up during that time, because also they're going to get stress hormones through the milk if it's something that you're doing. So I love that. I know you have a class coming up. I have a class coming up. If you guys need more information on anything, I mean, follow us on social media. Obviously, many of you are doing that right now. But New Hope Chiropractic is where Dr. Dixon is. And if you're in her neck of the woods, you've got to join her for a class. I think you've got one April 11th. I've got an awesome one on May 2nd. I also have a fantastic person coming next Wednesday, who is a parenting coach on Rethink Parenting, Love and Logic. Her name is Kim Cross, who is going to give you guys some parenting tips on things that we need to do, because we know parenting's changed. We know kids have changed. We talk about that in our office. The kids that are struggling, or families that are struggling, or they just need to like tie things back together with their home. Let's do that. So Dr. Angela and I will both post in the links some more resources for you. Dr. Dixon, if you could even put like some of those books up there, I think that would be awesome. Your podcast.
Yep.
That way people have a place to reach out to, and also be able to reference back to this video for people that need to have an encouraging birth story, or just something super cool and know there's something called a fetal ejection reflex. Did my picture just go away?
You did. You're kind of pink now.
Okay, well then let's just end it. Have a great evening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, Dr. Christy.